All right, there will be bourbon, which is right here, and there will also be Anthony Dyer. How are you tonight, brother?
Hey, I'm pretty good. Yourself, Eric?
I am doing great. Before we get into Anthony and his story, as always, this discussion, for me at least, will be fueled by America's native spirit. Tonight, going back to an old classic. I'd like to not repeat things on this, but we're 114 episodes in at this point. So we're back to Blanton's. It's been about 5 years since it made an appearance. Uh, Fun, useless trivia, facts, whatever it is you want to talk about. So Blanton's obviously made by Buffalo Trace, but it was the very first single barrel ever marketed in the United States. So that's what made
Nice.
Blanton's popular. In addition to the bourbon, it's pretty good. But again, drink what you like, not what somebody else tells you to drink. So, all right, that's what I got. Anthony, on to you, my friend. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to
Yeah.
be here, man. This is my third podcast ever, so bear with me here.
All right. So you're a veteran. I love it. Literally. All right. So tell me a little about the background. Where are you from?
So originally, I'm from grew up in Appalachia in North Carolina, a small town called Sylva in the mountains there, about an hour west of Asheville. I guess that'd be the next biggest city close to us.
Yeah.
Did 18 years there, and I get into the book a little bit there where I get the fork in the road. And my dad's like basically, the standard talk of get a job, go to college, or get out. And at that point, I decided to join the Air Force. And to be honest, my first, I would call it 10 years while I was in, felt like I was sitting on the sidelines. And then I'll get into more later, but I basically had the realization that I was seeing the same cracks in the road when I was home on leave, and decided to eventually become an aero gunner, which is now called Special Operations Aviator, and flying the mighty AC-130 gunship and the 16th Special Operations Squadron, and as well as the Payfawk helicopter, the Jolly Green Rescue Squadron.
Okay.
And then I retired 1 December of 21, and here I am reading a fifth grade level, and somehow got a book out. So, yeah.
Nice, nice, man. So okay, let's go back a bit. Why the Air Force? Because I would assume most guys coming from the area that you came from would probably, Army, Marine Corps, whatever. What drove you or made you pick the Air Force?
So my dad was he did like 4 years in the Air Force
Okay,
long
family thing.
before I was
Gotcha.
born.
Yeah.
Yeah, long before I was born, he was down in I think it's a MacDill there at Tampa,
Yep.
and
Yep.
then he taught me about the quality of life being in the Air Force and stuff like that, being a little in his eyes better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, continue why I get our golf club, stuff like that. And then I had talked to at least a Navy recruiter, and
Okay.
that guy was talking about 6 months on a boat, and then
Yeah.
talked to an
Yeah.
Army recruiter that didn't work out. So finally, I was like, yeah, I'll join the Air Force, and I was actually 17 when I think signed up still, and delayed
Okay.
enlistment program there, and
Yeah.
turned 18, graduated high school, and July of 18th of 2000 I joined. So
Okay. July of what?
July 18th of 2000 is when I joined the Air Force.
2000. Okay, at least in 2018. I was like, damn, that was
Oh no.
already got the book out. Nice. So 2000. Okay, so that's good. Okay, I'm glad we established that timeline. So you joined a few years before me. Obviously, my reason for joining was different than yours. Mine was totally based on 9/11 and the response to it. But so you're there in 2000. So take me through that. Are you going through, I guess, what would be your job school at that point? Are you already stationed somewhere when 9/11 happens?
Yeah. So I was already at that point in my career. I was a what we call a load toter, weapons loader. It was
Okay.
a 2W1 AFSC back then, anyways. But yeah, I was at Seymour Johnson. I loaded the Strike Eagle, the F-15 Strike Eagle platform there. 9/11 happened a year and some change right after I joined it. And it was very quick. And I was on mid shift, and I remember one of my buddies. He was on the same load crew as I. Yeah, I got off mid shift about 8. I think this happened. I think everything played out about 9 a.m. if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
He got knocked on the door. Then, I was like, "Hey, have you seen what happened?" And showing my age here, but I was like, "No, what are you talking about?" And I went to the day room, and tube saw, TV. There it was, and
Yeah.
the second plane hit, and it put I don't know, it put lit a fire in my ass at that point. To like sort of start thinking like, okay, man, those firefighters that ran in there, those 343 that day, what's different in their DNA, their blood, why do they do that?
All right.
And I eventually did, 5 years in my first 5 years in the Air Force, approximately. Then I joined the fire department for 4 or 5 years there at Charleston Air Force Base. And
Oh,
then,
really? Okay. So
yeah,
you were doing firefighting within the Air Force?
I was, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Went
Oh,
to
that's cool.
Lewis F. Garland Fire Academy, and graduated there. Then I went to Charleston. That was my whole time as a firefighter there, 4 to 5 years, something like that. And 2010, that's when I get to realization like, man, I really I was sitting on my butt, and you may get 3 good structure fires a year, which is a good thing on base, right? But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
but at that point,
more than I figured, to be
and,
honest.
yeah, yeah, man, a lot of PlayStation stuff like that, a lot of
Yeah.
pranks, right?
Okay.
I developed a pretty good arsenal of pranks before I became an arrow gunner, so it helped me out in that aspect.
Okay.
And then, 2010 there, I talk about in the book where, I was home on leave actually, and I was at a pizza place, and I'll never forget. I'm with some friends, and I call it the same cracks in the road. And I look out there and I see this. I was like, man, those cracks have been there since I can remember, right? Like same cracks in the road. What I'm really getting at is, you know, people content doing the same thing day in day out, not being happy and not making a
Yeah.
difference, right? And
Right.
I decided I was sitting on the sideline, and at that point, I got back to the firehouse and read a book by Dick Couch called Chosen Soldier, which in the front of that book, there's the Isaiah 6:8 verse, which is the send me verse. And, it did something to me. I saw that verse and I knew at that point, like, man, I want to get into special operations of some way, shape, or form. And, I think realistically, I realized, like, man, physically, like, I'm a realist. Like, I know I couldn't be an operator, um, that water's a game changer in itself.
Yeah.
And then I was like, man, I'm going to do the next best thing, which make sure those guys get home. And that'd be to find the AC-130 gunship. And close air support, that was our, that's what we sold. And those were our users, you know what I mean? So
So you go to like an Air Force special operations recruiter and have that chat, that conversation.
So I started out at the remember the old NCO Corp retraining program, because I was a E6, when I first retrained as an arrow gunner, and so I
Okay.
had to use that avenue to get there, which was like a wing level, like career advisor, I guess is what you call it.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
then
Career counselor for
and then
us.
I
Yeah.
I had
Okay.
talked to my uncle who he was a gunner on the ironically the same platform, the H model gunship, and he had retired at that point. And basically I was like, man, I want to do this. He's like, you sure? I'm like, yeah. And then, I put in for it on my, you get a few jobs you get to select, and it
Right.
was my number one choice. And I got it, thank God. And I got, stationed out here at Cannon Air Force Base in the 16th Special Operations Squadron. And never look back, man. I love flying, love the people I got to fly with and the people we support. It all meant the world to me.
So did you you were a gunner the whole time, or did you became an aviator or?
Yeah. So I was a aero gunner is what the AFSC was like in like 2010 still.
Yeah.
And then eventually like 2012, 2013, they changed the AFSC. What they did was the Air Force combined aero gunner with loadmaster and flight engineer duties.
Okay.
Basically a Swiss Army knife in the sky is
Yeah.
the way somebody put it the other
Mhm.
day. And, so you got one guy performing, all 3 of those tasks and more really, but, more with less type thing, but at the same time, I at least had the gunner knowledge and the basic flying knowledge and the other stuff I just had to, study in house and learn. So.
How do you train to become a gunner though in a gunship? How does that work? Does it all start simulator based and then you go up, or take me through
Yeah,
that?
so I'll take it back. Like back then, it was a basic aero gunner. You do it I think it's still in the Medina Annex, the aircrew fundamentals. You'd actually do first.
Okay.
Then the basic aero gunner, which was like, hey, this is like the weapon systems you could operate, right? These are ones you have to be clearing out malfunctions. You got a very basic overview of the weapons. And then I went to survival school there, Fairchild. Did that for 3 weeks, and then I did the water survival. Back then it was in Pensacola, Florida.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
then finally, months, I don't know, 8 to 10 months later, I'm going to my initial qualification course here at Cannon. And my first flight, I get in the book there, and my first flight, I had no idea what I was doing, man. I was like, my instructor said like something to the effect of like, you're the reason they have to brief seatbelts on airliners, Yeah, but we're I would say training wise, where an AC-130 gunner makes his money is the malfunction analysis, is getting that gun back online. When
Right.
it breaks in your combat, giving close air support to those guys on the ground. I know it sounds simple, but you could imagine those guys getting lit up, and
Oh, for
you
sure.
can't
Yeah.
figure out what's wrong with your gun. That's a terrible feeling.
Yeah.
So we took pride in being the weapons experts of the crew, and now we have more systems to learn. So
Your survival school was SEER. You guys you do go through SEER.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. How was that? I've heard all the
It
tales.
was
What your
honestly, man,
experience was like.
it was the best training I've ever had in my life, man. And to be
Really?
honest with you, like I don't ever want to do it again. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't hear
So
a lot of people are like, yeah, let's go back.
yeah, man. It's a one and yeah, you do your
One and
refresher,
done. Huh? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but the dunker, man, like, because I did the you know, the basic, survival school. That was cool. 3 weeks. I think I lost like 15 pounds really quick. And,
Mhm.
I went to water survival and air physical. That was really fun. They take you up and you get a very basic, like, parachutist type atmosphere. And they release you from the cell and they dropped you in the Gulf back then. And I think we had to survive for like 4 hours. It wasn't bad,
Oh
but
shit, 4 hours,
yeah,
not
yeah,
bad.
yeah, yeah.
Now the
Had
Gulf's
to boil a
warm, so
little.
that's not bad, right?
Yeah, yeah. I talked to a steer guy the other day. I guess they don't teach it down there. I'm not sure what happened down at Pensacola anymore, but it's all at Fairchild. What I did have to do at Fairchild was the dunker. And if you've ever heard of this,
No.
it's basically like a helicopter fuselage, if you will,
Okay.
and they take it down underwater, and you go through different iterations, and then you're upside down. You have a heat bottle you have to breathe out of, and the last one they blindfold you, and they teach you how to basically escape if you're underwater. And for the life of me, man, my last one, they had the blacked out goggles. I couldn't get a hold of this door. I couldn't find this door, and luckily enough, the guy, man, he threw me a ball in the cigar. I don't know if it was just having a good attitude or whatever the case was, but he's like, hey, man, he's like, you're going to work with, this guy for a week. And that steer guy, by the time he was done with me, man, it was the most comfortable being uncomfortable I've ever been.
Yeah.
And, that's a hard thing to overcome, that panic, when you got water coming in your nostrils, stuff like that. But he got me there, man. So
That's great, man. And so that was all what, 2010 you said?
yeah, 2010. And then I think I finally checked out as an aero gunner after, like, I don't know, I think it's like 17 flights or something like that back then. But it was like I think August of 2011, August, September. And then I did that deployment to Afghanistan right after. So
Okay, so you're where'd they send you in Afghanistan?
I went to Bagram.
Bagram.
Yeah, it
Okay.
was
Oh, Popeyes. Yeah, I love
yeah, yeah,
it.
yeah,
My thing with
yeah, man.
Popeyes at Bagram was everything tasted the same except the biscuits. Biscuits didn't taste
Yeah.
like it, which is the one thing I always wanted from Popeyes when I was in Bagram was
Oh
the,
yeah.
then they were awful. But
Yeah, man. I ate at that. Remember that green bean over there? Like
yeah,
I
yeah.
had that once, man, and I'm pretty sure I was like that dude on the Oregon Trail with like dysentery. Man, it was so bad, man. It was terrible. Man. I never had it again, but imagine trying to fly after that. So
Yeah, it's a different
yeah,
world for sure. Yeah, I didn't have those
yeah,
problems. That's great.
yeah.
All right, so you're at Bagram. What was a typical day for you in that role? Were you going up every
So
day to do support, or was it just
yeah, you're like basically as a flyer, you have a certain amount of hours within a 30-day period, and then
okay?
even a 90-day period. And the big one's the 90-day, where it's like I think 120 hours. And if you go over that, you need a waiver. But there is waivers for everything, right? But
Exactly.
we went like yeah, we went a while without shooting, man. It's like I mean, there'd be a lot of missions where like just your noise signature, guys on the ground would get a night's sleep because of that. Just for example, nights where you wouldn't shoot. And we had my first shoot, we had landed from supporting one op, and we had just shot the tweak rounds, which is basically if you think about like lining the sights in your gun, you're gonna spend a few rounds doing that, right? So same thing on the gunship. And so we got back, landed, and I thought we were done for the night. And basically, the pilot, the aircraft commander, comes back and he's like, "Hey, there's a Green Beret team taking fire. They're pinned down." So he's like, "Who's with me?" And we all said the typical send me, and went up. And then I'll get to say that in an hour and a half flight, at that point, I'd done more for my country than I had my whole life. So it was
That's
a
awesome.
really surreal feeling. Yeah. So
What year was that one?
that was 2011. That one. Yeah.
2011. Um,
Yeah.
all right, so that's what I'm curious about. So when you're doing those flights, what's your altitude? Like how high are you typically?
I mean, there's anywhere from 10,000 AGL above ground level, right, to
Crazy.
yeah, to like seven. It gets weird when you get above 17 trying to shoot. The tumble effect and
Yeah.
all that. Yeah, it's 10 to 17 would be I guess it wouldn't be that crazy to go out, up to 17,000 is what I'm trying to say.
So for you, the way I'm trying to anticipate, like, so at this, so I'm a bad guy right now, right? Like,
Right.
so I pose zero threat to you then. I'm just I'm just pure target,
Yeah.
basically, right? Like there's no
Yeah.
threat that you're concerned with at that level.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for the
That's
most
great.
part, especially like Afghanistan, they didn't have a lot that could reach out and touch us,
Yeah.
when the ISIS thing happened later, yeah, they had a few things that we had to really be mindful of, right? And
Uh,
you get briefings, what was where, stay out of this, this raw stuff like that. And but if a guy shot at us on a gunship, man, like they were dead, man. Like it was self-defense
yeah.
ROEs. Like I mean, we saw where it came from because we're in this huge racetrack orbit. It's like
Yeah.
NASCAR with guns.
Yeah.
So we could get our eyes and our IR laser on it, and the JTAC would see it too, and match it. And a lot of times we just shoot them right after they shot at us and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
I mean, like me, like I've seen all those videos, and I just remember imagining like that's gotta suck to be on the opposite end of
Yeah.
that, like knowing you literally can't do anything about it. Like,
Yeah,
it's over.
yeah, I think it's crazy, man, because like out of all the airframes, I'm not just tooting my own horn because I'm a gunship guy, but like if there's one airframe they feared, I think it was the gunship, and we'd
Oh,
always
I
joke
mean,
with the regular 130s, man. We're like, hey, man, if you're ever getting shot at, just start doing left hand turns, they'll start running. You know what I mean? Like, that's how it was. I mean,
yeah,
the Taliban at least knew at that point, like
really, yeah.
who would give them the business. So,
Because you bring up a good point though, like. For me, for example, so I never knew until we started seeing those videos in Iraq in like '03, '04. Obviously saw a ton of them in Afghanistan. 'Cause technology had just, between '03 and 13, obviously they're very different between the
yeah.
proliferation of the internet, cell phones, tech, everything being passed around. But seeing that for the first time, like I didn't know you could do that with a C-130. Like I just thought it was some transport ship, right? And we jumped out of it for airborne operations. I had no idea we had guns on 50 cal. What is the gun system on those? Is it 50 cal?
So, so no. On
No.
at that
Okay.
point, you know the H model, like that thing didn't even pressurize, man. We had tail numbers like 7.2 and 6.9. The same skeleton or the structure of the airframe was the same ones that flew in Vietnam, which were often referred to as Puff the Magic Dragon back then. Um, and basically, but back then on the H model, we just had the 40 mil Bofors cannon, which was a anti-aircraft Navy gun,
Okay.
and we hung that on the side of the gunship, and we're doing orbits. Then we had the 105 howitzer basically there, and it has basically about a 45-pound, artillery round, if you will. And
Yeah.
the same thing, we're hanging that from the side of a gun, side of a platform like a C-130 and shooting things with it, and it's all based on what we call the power on turn, a lot of math pilots getting that rate and the coincidence to tighten up that circle and, waiting for that moment where the JTAC calls you in overhead and then you start shooting, and I was biased. I'll be honest, man. Like coming from the H model, like that, the original Spectre gunship, right? Like to the whiskey platform where we started dealing with bombs and stuff like that. And at that point we had, the air to ground missiles in the back, the Griffins, what we called them, and then the STBs on the wings. And I don't, as a gunner, didn't play hardly any role in that besides watching it, which was awesome. The first time I seen it actually work, I was like, man, like I regretted talking shit immediately. Like that thing was awesome what it could do. So more of
What?
a bomb truck now, So,
Yeah. So, but
yeah,
what's the accuracy? Like, is it everything's just pretty much pinpoint or?
yeah. I mean, if you got a tweet gun, man, if you're going to get within a couple meters with a 105, they're dead at that point,
Yeah.
and there's the danger close parameters, stuff like that, and
Right.
that's what you have to. That's what really you have to make you pucker a little bit, when you knowing where the ground guys are, right, and you're in a danger close shoot and
Yeah.
knowing those numbers at the top of your head, but okay, and then if they request it, they got to give you like their ground force commander's initials, and then there's a saying we have that basically, the JTACs and those like, for example, those seals on the ground, are they on the rounds, right? But
Right.
we on the switches, and God forbid somebody gets in like fratricide or something like that, which
Yeah.
there's guys I've known, man, been on bad, not that side of it, but bad shoots, and it stays with them, So
Yeah. So, all right. Let's fast forward. Where's this 2018 the Jolly Green Rescue?
so at this point, in 2016, I had went to the HA-60 Payhawk helicopter as a special missions aviator. Same thing, you're doing aero gunnery with the 50 caliber minigun on that platform, as well as flight engineer duties, hoist, deploying the fast rope, things of that nature for the PJs. And so, long story short, man, we had been to East Africa. I'll just say that, and then basically on June 8th, 2018, there was it was the seventh day of a 7-day op. I'll never forget it, and I went to the talk and I was like, hey, like, we're holding down 24-hour coverage of this thing. And basically they did a gaff, like a a ground assault force on the the Humvees and the MRAPs into somewhere. And I went back to my room to catch some shut eye, and right as I laid down, man, I heard tension on the net, scramble, scramble, scramble. And at that point, man, I think we lifted 2 helicopters up and all the J's in the back in about 3.5 minutes, and we're on our way into the fight. And a lot of crazy stuff happened, even the first minute after takeoff, and that's when really like your training kicks in, man, and like your adrenaline's pumping so hard, and
Where were you
basically
in this? Where were you guys stationed then?
I'm not getting into that, but I'll just
Okay,
say the
but
Horn
you
of
weren't at
Africa.
Bagram, right? Okay,
No, no, no. So the helicopter, the Castleback, that was all East Africa.
okay, East Africa. Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
the
Gotcha.
Horn of Africa, if you will.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, and there's a point in the mission where you realize, like, man, like I've been here 100 times before in training, and then you're just comfortable in that moment. I don't know how to say it, but at the same time, man, you want to, we saw the best side of combat search and rescue that day, meaning we saved 5 lives, and one Eagle, one American didn't make it back. So that was one that stays with me. So.
And that's not something. Is that something you cover in your book?
Yeah. I talk about that mission, man, and I can go in more detail here if you want.
Yeah, absolutely, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but basically, I get to the point where we hear the scramble, come across the radio there, and we get to the helicopters. You put your vest on, your helmet on, you get your comms up, the PJs get on, and we took off, man. And I remember we just slightly turned right, like the right hand bank, to go to the area where the Castleback was, and I just see boom, 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 round impacts, and basically the left SMA or gunner, he had a runaway gun. So basically, as soon as he armed it, the steering nostrils went on the 50 cal where it just continually started shooting rounds, and so he like pulled it back to hold the rounds from going out, and I had just pulled the CMDS pins, which is our flares and chaff, basically to protect us against IR missiles and stuff like that. And there was it rained a lot, and somehow the water got in the that panel.
Oh shit!
And long story short, all this is going on about the same time, and I pulled the pins, man, and like we jettisoned all of our flares, and I could literally feel the heat. Like I'm surprised I had any eyebrows left after that. And then I hear over the radio like I'm piecing together a 5-line. The JTAC is which is rare for them to call a rescue helicopter to do that before we even landed at the LZ. And then there's a point, man, where I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like I'm at that point, Lane, because it's organized chaos, and on top of that, you got everything against you that you could at that point, But we get there, man, and basically we did about 4 gun patterns, if I remember right. All 4 guns on target, 2 each helicopter, and there was basically what it was there was 12 assholes in the tree line, and the JTAC marked it with a purple smoke, so we knew where to shoot. And long story short, we ended up getting, like, I think in the end 8 out of 12 of them. But we do 4 gun runs, and then we land on this little road there. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, you're good, man.
And then they brought the American in first, and then another American in. Then I had on my aircraft another partner nation. He had got shot in the gut, and it's all this seems like forever in the moment, right? And then and we go take back off, and we immediately go back into a gun pattern, a racetrack pattern. And I look back, for a second, and the PJ's giving this guy a tracheotomy, and
oh shit,
like, oh shit, man, like, it's just real, like it hits you, right? Like, man, this is it, And then more gun patterns, and then we get to this point where Terrell was on the ground picking up their their cat alpha patients and stuff like that, and basically we have to say, okay, we're going to give it one more pass because the golden hour, we got to get this guy back to the operating table. And so sure enough, by the grace of God, we right when we said that, they lifted off, and they went and showed, and we followed out of there and got him back, and rearm my helicopter when I got back, and put gas in it, and went right back into the fight because they had one more guy on their bird they had to pick up. And at that point, I saw what they did to American, and it's unleashed half of my 50 cal rounds at least in that tree line at that point. So yeah. And then we get back, man, and I'll never forget the other gunner, he's really more experienced than I was. He was like, check the helicopter for bullet holes, and I'm
Mhm.
looking, and I get done with that. And I go up and I see that my aircraft commander's his face, and he's like, and I just knew, I was like, man, like what happened? He's like, we lost an American. He died when he got back, and and I'm sitting there thinking like, man, this is someone's brother, someone's son, someone's friend, and
Right. Yeah.
that's when I really learned what service before self or sacrifice was. I witnessed it that day, and guys like him, man, like that's our best, so
And
that
this
stays with you.
this this was 2018.
It is, yeah, June 8th, 2018, yes.
So you're 18 years in at this point. So I'm just
Yeah.
curious. I mean, very different from when you were 18 years old, right?
Oh yeah.
You spent half your life in at this point, right? Like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
kid that joined at 18 is not the man he was at, 36 going through this. I'm just curious. Um, from the time you had that moment in the day room where you're like, all right, it's time to get serious, to that awakening in
Yeah.
2010 where you felt like you were just sitting on the sidelines, to that moment, did anything that you saw or experienced just in the country, politically, people back home, friends, family, anything, did any of that ever make you waver or question what you were still doing? Did you ever get
No,
this? Yeah, okay. Did you ever get disheartened
no,
with anything?
I did not, because in the end it was never about them. It was about
Right.
the guy and gal
Yep.
beside me, and
Yep.
that's what we fight for. And I think America needs to realize that, like, it's not about anything else but the guy or gal beside you. Yeah,
Hmm.
you have to go for the same mission for the same political reasons or goals, but at the end, it's for each other. We're our
Right.
brother's keeper, and
Hmm.
especially on gunships, I took that to heart a lot. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
overwatching those guys, stuff like that, and that was my whole why, man. And I get to the end of the book there, and I get into like my last trip to, I went back to gunships in the end and the whiskey platform, and we went to Iraq, and it was just slow, and these jobs are jobs you never really want to have to do, because a lot of times it's someone's worst day or could be last day, right? But
Right.
at the same time, you want to be the guy to go if it happens, and um, so basically I was just bored my last deployment. I got back and I hit the retirement button, and like my why, my reason for serving, it was was gone at that point in my mind.
Yeah.
I started drinking heavy, man. Like, I mean, at least a pint a day, and it just got out of control, and ended up getting help at that point, my last year in, and got out, and do my best to stay sober and all that good stuff. So
You bring up or it was in the release, mental health advocacy, right?
yeah.
We get into, obviously, I mean, I could just pick apart the stuff you said. Like it's pretty clear that this stuff sticks with people, right? Especially guys like
Oh
yourself who've seen a lot of um, not just the combat, but the loss element, right? You talk about the
right.
individuals you lost and see trying to help. So um, you came back and fell into to the drinking, like you said, but then you reached out and got help. What made you actually get help?
So it gets to a point in the book there, my wife gives me that ultimatum, like,
Okay.
it's either the
Right.
alcohol and it, or me and Sullivan, your daughter,
Yeah.
there's no, not even a question. Went and got help, and I feel like I'm a better man because of that, and
Of course.
I can tell guys, like, man, like, I know no one wants to be like, if you're a ground guy, right? No one wants the guy that to not deploy because you can't arm, right? Can't. And then if you're a flyer, you don't want to be the guy to go down because you can't fly because you're mentally got problems, right? But
Mhm.
that's something we band-aided for years, man.
Oh
We
yeah.
did 2 decades of war, and like you said
Right.
earlier, half our adult life was over there, right? And like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's we need to realize it's okay not to be okay. And as far as the advocacy goes, like, I tell guys that, young guys, whoever, like, man, like, you'll get to a point where you got to take that tactical knee, man, and do it, man.
Yeah.
You're a better person because of it.
Did you go through civilian, Air Force? Was it VA? Like what was your first resource?
So my first resource, excuse me, was the preservation of the force and family has their own, like,
Okay.
USOCOM, like, mental health. They're called the MFLAG, and basically a psychologist, and she had me do, which is why I ended up really telling the story. Now I think about it, but she basically, I did prolonged exposure because I didn't want medication at the time, and
Right. Right. Exactly.
and the idea behind that is, like, again, being uncomfortable talking about it, and so she had me write it out and write it out. And then, I mean, the first time I told the story, I cried, and then she cried even. And then She told me 100 times, you should tell your story, man, and I was like, man, never. Right. And then I get out, and then I was like, you know what, maybe I can't pay it forward. And, like I said, for the advocacy part of this, like maybe someone will get help. If one person gets help after reading the book, then that's a blessing, man. So,
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So now we're at the book, Moonchild.
yeah.
Why that name? It's a great Iron Maiden song, by the way. But why?
Yeah. Yeah. So the moon, I thought about this many nights. I've always been intrigued by the moon, man, especially the full moon, right? Like, flying on the gunship, I remember like on 100% illumination, man, like it was effortless. Like, you could pick up every peak, every mountain train, enemy tracer fire, you name it. It was like a guide light for us,
Yeah.
and then I thought about, those moments where you're flying, and, on your worst day, right? Like everything's against you, systems, emergency procedures, weather, communications, and that's the day where you don't get to fail, you get to rise, man. And that's, not a sound cliche, but the moon burns the brightest on the darkest nights. And
Right.
that's what it's about, So it starts off with that poem from Rita Clint there. Yeah, that's my favorite poem. So I got it here, and I just live by that, man. So.
Um, okay. So you said you were motivated by getting help, right? Writing out your story and all.
Yeah.
So now you got to write a book, right? Well,
Yeah.
so what was that process like for you? Were you able to knock it out quick, or were you slow? Because I've
Oh yeah.
a lot of authors on here, and I got all kinds of different formulas and how they do it. And like I said, I've been putting off writing stuff for going on almost 17 years. This shit that I want to write about, but so
Yeah.
yeah, take me through how'd you do it?
First of all, I'd tell you, man, if you got words in your heart, man, definitely bleed them on that page, man. You'll feel better. But as far as me writing, right, like I'd had like a fraction of what I have in the book, which is a relatively short book anyway. And yeah, I think like 2 hours you're done. But yeah, I had a lot of the mission stuff on there, and not a lot of my upbringing, stuff like that. And what would happen every time really I wanted to drink, man, and like I would get this emotional Charlotte's Web of words and try to make sense of them and throw them on paper. And then I was on LinkedIn, and I just looked up like editors for like military, some of that nature.
Yeah.
And that's when I ran into Holly McKay, which was a journalist, a war journalist, and we organized a phone call, and I gave her my idea and sort of what the book would be about, and sent her what I had, and then it was just back and forth. She was so good at really pulling that, I don't know, those emotions, those words out of me, to make them make sense, to help me make sense of these. And I got them on paper. Then she introduced me to a publisher there at Trademarker Media, Robbie Grayson. And he's like, yeah, man. He's like, I love it, man. Like, he gave me the cover and, cleaned up, obviously punctuation, little changed a few words here and there. But yeah, like I said, I'm North Carolina education, man. I probably, honestly, I really do probably still read them at 5th grade level, but somehow managed to, with help, get a book out there. So
That's great, man. And you're back where you grew up now? Are you back in
no,
Appalachian, or where are you?
So I stayed in New Mexico here near Cannon
New Mexico.
Air Force Base. A small town called Clovis, and my wife's from the Navajo Nation up near Gallup. And long story short, got a job pretty much on terminal leave, when I got out in the flight simulator, building those scenarios for guys and stuff like that. So
that's cool. So what's that like for you? Is that something that keeps you connected to what you were doing?
Yeah.
Is that why you wanted to kind of still do it without having to hop back in?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I think like, when you get to see, a few of the same faces you even flew with, right? And like,
right. Yeah.
And then like, you get to take your experiences and you get to build these scenarios, the complex scenarios, and all virtual reality. I mean, people pay a lot of money to play a video game that big. I hate to call it that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, to get those lessons learned and get them, in a scenario, then to have the crew come back after deployment, but man, like, thank you, man. That really helped me, stuff like that. And
yeah,
that's an ultimate win right there, man. So.
That's great. Is your dad is he still around?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's still around. Yeah.
What's he think about everything that from the time he was like, hey, you got to go do something to, now you wrote a book. Like, where's your book, Dad? Like,
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, man, me and my dad are really close. We used to go fishing a lot, man. I get that in the book there. But I would always be back home, and he would hear me tell my standard dick and fart jokes, and stuff like that. He'd be like, man, you should write a book, more on the comedy side of things. But
Right.
you know,
I agree with that, what you said. Like,
yeah,
because there's so much humor. Like I'm sure you got it in the book too, but yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. And then so I did a little bit of that, and then when I waited till I got it done, I was like, Dad, like to finish the book. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah. And I was like, we'll see how it does, and see what the feedback is from it, and see people's openness to it. And it's really not. It's for veterans, but at the same time, like I wanted to paint a picture for regular Americans, man. That
Oh
say, hey,
yeah.
this is the stuff that goes on when you're sleeping, man. Like this
Yeah.
is a real thing.
That's cool. Yeah.
May not happen often, but it happens. So,
That's a great point. And like I said, you never know. I mean, I think books like the one you wrote are probably going to be stuff that, people are going to be stumbling upon years from now, right? Like you can't really worry about whether it's instant gratification with people picking it up, but
yeah,
20 years from now, some kid's going to pick up this book and read it, and it's going to be something that goes to what you said. Like, hey, these are the things that actually go on, especially when you're sleeping, because, 9.5 hour
yeah,
difference between Afghan or where I don't even know what the time zone is in East Africa, but yeah,
yeah,
those are the things, right? Like, and it's not even meant to just, oh, I'm not trying to say it's going to be like inspirational or anything, but it wakes people up to the fact that, you know what, there's a lot of men and women doing stuff that most Americans aren't because
oh
they
yeah,
didn't have to. Like that was the big issue with us in the GWAT, in my opinion, was, you know, I had a buddy on this before. He's like, we went to war, America didn't. Like that was the thing he said, and it stuck with me, and
right,
that's what I titled his podcast issue or label. But I always thought that line is so good, and it ties into what you said. It's like we get caught up in thinking that America was at war for 20 plus years, and it's like not really. It was men like
yeah,
you from Appalachian, from the
yeah,
Appalachian, like men like you and so many guys from that part of the country, man, and like and the South in general. Like
yeah,
those are the people who always come and answer the call, no matter what, right? And you were already in. It's not like this was a response to
yeah,
them. And so you were just carrying on family tradition, and that's another thing that's lost on so many people is like the same people who were doing it from a family legacy perspective. I mean, that's why we had such a recruiting crisis for 7 years. People were fed up.
oh yeah,
Dads were
yeah,
telling
yeah,
their
yeah,
kids not to join, right? It's just because of the way
yeah,
things were going, and now we're seeing that turn around, fortunately. But it's true what you said, though, man. Like the book needs to be something that makes people aware because there's so many of the typical stories, and I think yours is completely unique, right? Like not a lot of people know someone who was a fucking gunner on a gunship or
yeah,
did stuff on the helicopters like you did. Like that's an important story that can wake people up to say, oh, look, here's another path to something that they never would ever consider because it doesn't get broadcast. I'm trying to think back on the story you're telling, and it was probably lost in the media. Maybe they didn't even want to cover it. I don't know if it was, but that's the
yeah, yeah.
like it
Yeah,
doesn't.
there's a few things out there, but
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, man, it's such a good point you made, man. We're just, the biggest takeaway I got from all of that would be, you know, all of us in different parts of America, right? This melting
right.
pot of
Yep.
guys and gals, right?
Yep.
We're all just normal people doing very, unnormal, abnormal, I guess is the right word,
Abnormal. Yeah.
things, especially on the gunship, and you don't think about it in the heat of everything, but when that dust settles, man, and like your that purpose, your why is sort of gone. You know,
Yeah.
I when I process, man, there wasn't even a door handle on the other side of the door. If you think about that, that I mean, that's deep, bro. That's like, man, like this
Bye.
machine keeps going, right?
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
And back to the telling your story, man. I mean, I think every veteran has a story, and without authors and writers and books, right? Like these things are gone, man. So
Yeah.
it's
No,
good
that's a
to
great
let
point,
let
man.
America know.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, I gotta do that. I'm gonna do that. Yeah.
Highly recommend it. So.
So what are you doing now besides that with the book? I know this is podcast number 3, but like when did it come out?
So it came out on my birthday, actually, April 7th.
Oh, happy
So
birthday,
it's been
man.
out a few months now. Yeah,
Nice.
thank you. Yeah, yeah. I'm the old guy that smells like old guy in the simulator now, I guess. but but yeah, it came out April 7th, and my publisher sort of made it come out on that date as a, I don't know, not a surprise, but hey, it's your birthday. Here's
Here's
a
a
book,
book, yeah.
Yeah. So but no, it worked out, and then it's I had even a gunner I flew with the other day, and I don't think it's really even hit me yet, man. Like, man, you published a book, dude. Like, I, in my mind, like I don't think it's that big of a deal. You know what I mean? But like, same
Yeah.
time, it's like
No,
to
that's
some
pretty
people
cool,
it
man.
might.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's super cool, man.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Yeah, like I said, I know a ton of dudes who've turned into authors, and some of them are like you said. It's like I can't believe you can even write words, let alone write a book. So that's
Yeah.
my um yeah. So where can they find this book? Where can we get it at?
So you can find it on Amazon, Barnes and
Okay,
Noble, online there, anywhere they sell books, and it's
everywhere.
just
Good
titled Moonchild, the
child.
Roots and Wings of a Combat Special Operations
All
Aviator
right.
by Anthony Dyer. So,
Okay, and you're not on Twitter yet, but we're gonna work on that. You're on
Roger.
Instagram. What's where can they find you there?
So it's Marco Brolo, and I think it's like Marco underscore Brolo 21 on Instagram, then just Marco Brolo on Facebook. Which I know it's my friends get mad at me for sort of having that name, man. It's not putting my actual name on there, but yeah,
Whatever.
yeah,
What you got to following?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's great, man. Like I said, I appreciate you coming on and telling your story a bit because it's important. And I think, like I said, even I've spoken to a lot of guys with a lot of backgrounds, and yours was completely unique. Like it's like I said, I told you that was what made me respond to your that PR person is just like you're the first person I ever knew that was a gunner on a gunship. Like no one thinks about that, right? Like as much as it's so cool and we've all seen these videos and it's like, wait a minute, there actually is someone up there. Like who are these people?
yeah.
They're not hard. They're not easy to find, I guess. No one's walking around like, hey, I got the sign on me that says I was a gunner on the gunship on that video you want. So yeah,
Yeah,
fantastic, man.
it was a blessing, and thank you for having me on here, man. And like I said, just being in the gunship. The day I got that Spectre patch, man, that was one of the best days of my life, and that Jolly Green patch, man. And we're like I said, we're not operators by any means. We're aviators to make sure
Mhm.
that those super ninjas, as I call them, get home. And
Super
take
ninjas.
a lot of pride in that. Yeah, yeah. Make sure those guys get home to their family. And there was a letter every day in the 16th I would read, and it was from a ranger, and he's holding his girl, right? And he's like, thanks to the gunship and your guys' rounds and your people, I got to see this,
That's awesome,
my
man.
baby girl.
Yeah,
That's my whole life, man. So
that's awesome, dude. That's great. All right, man. Well, that's Anthony Dyer. You know where to find him. Get the book Moonchild anywhere on Amazon or where those wonderful books are sold. And thanks again, brother. Appreciate it.
thank you, brother. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.